Hey, how's it going, you guys? Back with another one for you here today. So, I want to talk a little bit about this concept called parts integration. Now, I've heard about it from a number of different fields, but I'm going to give you my take on it here today. So, basically, to start with the idea of parts integration, what you have to understand is that we are all like a collection of sub personalities or these different parts, um, as the title suggests. And parts can come online at different times in our lives for different reasons. A lot of times uh, they pop up because um, when we're younger, maybe they are a way we respond to get a need met. Sometimes it's just out of survival, right? And so the idea is that you are you are just awareness. Okay. And so you'll hear about this in a lot of spiritual circles, and if you're into meditation and the like, the idea that you're not your body, you're not your emotions, you're not your thoughts, you are the thing observing the thoughts. All right. And so really the thing that most of the time people call themselves the conscious ego is a collection of ideas, thoughts, habits, basically a collection of parts that jive with who they think they are. They're parts that work well up until the a problem arises. And so they've been integrated and working up into a point. But then what ends up happening is we get cross currents. Okay, we get an internal tug of war. The conscious ego, which is like the collection of parts that is being identified with, wants to go in one direction, and then there might be these other parts in the unconscious that are not so well integrated. Either a person might flip flop and go into one of these parts in one compartmentalized area of their life, or the part is operating from the unconscious and acting out, and the person either self sabotages or finds themselves enacting behaviors that they don't really like or they want to deal with, right? So basically imagine that you only have so much energy in your system, and you don't want it going off in different directions, different parts, all fighting for the spotlight. The more you can get parts aligned and working with each other, all of your force can go in one direction, and you move forward a lot more smoothly and a lot more powerfully. So the question is how is parts integration done? So I sometimes have done this in a journal where I have like two columns, one to represent one side or one part, the other to represent the other. Sometimes I've done it in a visualization, similar to like a Jungian active imagination. And sometimes it's a lot more informal. I just kind of think and contemplate from either side's position. So the first thing you want to do is you want to, like, relative to a desire or a goal or a value that you have, okay, and this is something that you want, okay, so it's going to be probably coming from that conscious ego, the conscious part of yourself, right? When you ask yourself, like, what do I want? Like, what are my goals? What am I trying to go after? And so you take that and then you ask, what is the positive intended outcome there? Usually this will be pretty easy to ascertain because it's going to be coming from that sense of self that is most familiar, most comfortable. But great, we want to know, what's the positive intended outcome? Why do I want this thing? What is it really going to get me? So you've got that. Let's say you're writing it out in a journal. So you've got that down. Now you're going to look at bringing up the main oppositional part or parts. Sometimes you might have what you want to go towards, and the part the majority of you that is for that. And then other times it might be multiple parts that want their own thing. But let's say we're working with just one to begin with. So you bring that up. What's the main oppositional part? Okay. And it's important to say here that there's no shaming or destroying parts. Okay. That just drives them into the unconscious, drives them into the shadow, and then it makes the problem worse. So there is only honoring and integrating parts, leveling them up and bringing them into the whole so that, like we said, you can move the whole situation forward, bringing all of these aspects of yourself together, unifying them. So, with that said, so you've got the main oppositional part, and you want to ask, what is its positive intention? Okay, because a lot of times parts come online, like I was saying, when you're maybe a kid or something like that, in response to abuse or whatever. Maybe your family just doesn't have the resources or the understanding to make you feel seen about something that you needed. And so you developed a part that helped get that need met in some way, shape, or form. Okay. And then the issue is that later on, that part hasn't gone anywhere and its behavior becomes maladaptive relative to where the whole is now trying to go, where you as the conscious aware being is are trying to take your life. But you want to honor, and so that you can integrate that part, so you want to say like, okay, so when you're basically talking to that part, so you're saying like, what is the positive thing that you're trying to get from me? A lot of times it will respond with a don't want. Okay, like, I don't want to feel embarrassed or something like that. And so then you can take that don't want and then flip it, and then that will often give you what the actual desire is that that part that's in opposition is trying to get. So then now you have its positive intended outcome. And to take that a step further, you can go up a level, you can go meta on that desire and ask yourself, what is the higher value that that outcome represents? Okay, that's the real gold, because that's truly what the part is after. N- these parts inside of us, they aren't really trying to sabotage us. They're going for that higher value. They're just doing it in the way that they know best. Okay. And so now you've got, like, let's say the two columns, you've got the part that wants to move towards what you want and its in positive intended outcome. You've got the part or parts that are in opposition and their positive intended outcome. And now you want to let them dialogue with each other. Okay. So basically, it's kind of like saying to them, like, the first part, like, what's something that you would want for the part in opposition to understand about your perspective? Great. Now you ask the part in opposition, what is something that you would want the other part to understand from your perspective? Okay. So you get this sort of cross pollination. It's almost like reaching understanding between two people, because in a certain sense two people might be parts of a family or an organization, or even a romantic partnership has two parts, and so they have to dialogue with one another to reach understanding. Okay. And then once you've got this cross pollination, you can go back and forth as many times as you want. You then want to ask both parts, what is a new middle way that we could all together, remember the we and the all together is all happening inside of you for the purpose of this exercise. So yeah, like, what is a new way that we could move forward that is going to get the need both of your needs met? Okay. And so it's important to understand that it will never really work to satisfy one side and completely ignore the other's needs. this is often what leads to the flip-flopping between like two sides, like one side that is like great at going after goals and uh, pursuing what it wants, and then it feels like self-sabotage maybe when the other side pops up to go after what it wants. So through this dialoguing between parts, you want to give them an opportunity, and then you're facilitating this as the conscious awareness. You're basically moving the parts that might be moving, having a tug of war, and directing them in the same direction so that the force is flowing smoothly together. Once you've done this, okay, and ideally you reach that middle way, and uh, and that's great. And now you can take action on it, and you're not going to have as much internal resistance. If you don't, if you can't reconcile them right off the bat, no worries. Like doing this will have started an internal process where eventually insights will bubble up about how you can find a middle way and move things forward. All right. And so what you want to do at the end of like one of these sessions is you want to thank these two parts of yourselves or multiple parts, treating them like whole individuals unto themselves. Thank the parts and let them know that inside of you, in your mind, in your psyche, that they can continue to work this out. That there is a willingness for to be heard on both sides, and that you will hold space for them to be heard, so that they can be brought together, unified. And then that brings you back to like the beginning, where now you are a more whole collection of subpersonalities. These things have been brought up, given the attention and the awareness that they needed, so that they could be healed, integrated, and so that there's no longer these cross currents or that internal tug of war. So parts integration, super powerful technique, super powerful process. I've used it time and time again in my life. Anytime I'm starting to feel like I'm having trouble making a decision, or feeling like I'm flip flopping on something, I do this process. I bring up the parts, dialogue with them, figure out what it is they're after, and then, like a mediator would between two people, you're mediating between these parts in yourself so that you can move forward more smoothly without resistance and get where you're trying to go.